And today we're going to be talking about innovation that everybody's asking about. That's all about artificial intelligence, AI. And I have someone here today who is an expert in the world of AI. In fact, I learned pre show that she brings AI and wellness together. We might get there today, but I've got Anka Plateau Trifon. She is a coach, a speaker. She is a host of the Events Demystified podcast. You should go check that out. But Anka, welcome to the show.
Well, Phil, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm a big fan of your work and your book as well, Unforgettable.
Thank you.
Your podcast is definitely a constant reminder that experience event design is more than logistics. It's about how we make people feel and remember and act. And that's exactly the kind of mindset I want to bring forth today in our conversation because I'm super excited when it comes to all things AI, but not as like this shiny new object, more of a deliberate strategic tool to support the kind of memorable, meaningful, and momentous events that you champion. So excited about this.
You obviously prepared because you've got my framework down. There's something about you that is unforgettable that I think actually translates. And I forgot to say this in the intro, so I want to get it in here, folks. Anka is a professional bodybuilder. And something that bodybuilders have to do is something we as event planners should do more of. And that's they set their sights on a date. Back in January, Anka began dieting for a competition that's in September. And that requires a lot of discipline. And the same thing needs to happen as we're thinking toward an event that's coming up. And I don't know that we bring the same kind of discipline that to our events that you're bringing to bodybuilding. So I just want to use that to cue up this conversation because maybe that is the entree into how AI can help us. But start with that wherever you'd like to.
Absolutely. Well, you're absolutely right because, when I got into bodybuilding and I have this whole series of not just podcast episodes about that journey, because it's more than just, one day I woke up and decided to train for a competition. That wasn't the case. But when I got into it, I didn't realize how much I was going to change in the process and how much it was going to influence not just my physical and mental and emotional capabilities, but also the way I lead events, the way I produce events, the way I plan, the way I look at my business and my entrepreneurship journey, and how there's a parallel in everything. I talk quite a few times in my talks about this, and you can't stop me from bringing up the Fit for Events framework because I really felt like I needed, like the same way how you were thinking about a framework, like how do I encompass everything that I'm thinking in a way that makes sense to the receiver, right? So when we think about events, when we think about AI, when we think about the things that we are passionate about, I try to put it in containers. Even the content that I create, I try to really have it all done in containers because it's important to have not just a workflow. And it's so interesting to me that after we have planned events for so many years, I mean, I've been in the business for 20 some years. I'm sure you've been in the business double that, not to
Not that old. Come
really
on.
date ourselves. But one thing I see coming up again and again in conversations with event professionals and meeting professionals, but also agencies, is the lack of processes and workflows. Like we know what we do and we do what we know, right? And we do a gazillion of tasks. But if I were to take that and dissect it and say, okay, so let's look at your workflow the same way how you look at the event cycle, right? And that's when we can introduce the conversation about AI in a strategic manner. Where can AI fit within this workflow of yours? That's when you realize how many holes you can poke into somebody's process because they don't really have a process. So then you're left with a lot of tools that are being implemented sporadically many times and not a lot of outcomes. And that's what I try to advocate for, more of a strategy behind AI, because we don't want to look at AI like some kind of a magic. I don't know, genie in a bottle, nor do we want to fear it, right? It's not here to take your job, although sometimes we have to be also realistic that if your job is easily to be taken away by AI, maybe it's time for you to look at other ways in which you can provide value in whatever area, domain of expertise that you have. But what I'm saying is AI is definitely going to take on the task that we don't have to do so much anymore. Think of it as your newest team member that you have to train in the ways of how you do things. It doesn't sleep, it doesn't ghost you, it doesn't go, millennial on you where you're like, I need to take a time off, and then I never hear from my young employees ever again. It's just, I've been through this. This is another topic, but it's all in the way you prompt it, in the way you allow it to help you brainstorm, write, summarize, analyze at a speed that it's very hard for a human to really match. But it's not going to be as good as the strategy, the thought process that is guiding it. And a lot of the talks that I really try to go on either like middle of the road, but really it's interesting to me that even like 22 months later, right, we're talking about 22 months of full on AI since ChatGPT 2 came on the market as the enterprise model released by OpenAI. um, we have been playing with it. Some of us have been really dove into it. We're looking at creating agents, and we're looking at elevating our workflow in many different ways. However, there's also a lot of people that are very, very brand new. I was giving a talk just last month in front of a group of about 60, a smaller group, 60 of meeting professionals, and I wanted to bring them up to speed to the latest AI tools. Even though I'm not such a huge proponent of, hey, here's all those AI tools, go and try them. I'm more of a look at your workflow, look at your processes. Where can we embed maybe 3 4 tools, like not all of them, just look at what can we do to optimize and maximize the time that you have, the processes, the workflows, and then allow AI to do what it does best. However, it's interesting to see how many have not even played with a ChatGPT or a Copilot or a Gemini. And to me, that's mind blowing because I'm like, I use it every single moment of the day. I used to um, keep somewhat of a loose track of my thoughts and ideas throughout the day because I get a brand new thought every other minute. And to keep track of everything, I used to just write it here on sticky notes. I have a bunch of sticky notes everywhere. I used to send emails to myself. I used to send messages in WhatsApp to myself just so I can kind of keep track of what I'm thinking and maybe go back to it, add more context, add more thoughts as they come, right? Like I'm in the middle of a workout session, I'm in the middle of a call, I'm in the middle of like writing an email or maybe a script or whatever. And I would always lose my notes. I'm like, what was I thinking? Where did I write it? Where did I put it? Now I straight up go to ChatGPT, I open a new thread, I input my thoughts, and then I leave it. And then later, maybe, in the day or the next day, I come back to that thread and then I give it more context, I give it more thought, I work more on that. And now I have this super long list, organized list of topics, of content, of speaking ideas and topics that I can work on event themes and different type of, maybe sponsorship ideas to pitch to my clients, right? All of that now it's organized in a way that it's so much easier to go back and keep working on because I have the squirrel brain, right? I'm the ADHD adult that can start this and go here and do this and do this and do this, and then I start back here and I go 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 go. If I didn't have a way to sort of organize it all in a way that works for me, I would never be able to go back and pick up this one amazing thought process that I had, that I wrote it somewhere. So not only will AI replace a bunch of the tasks that we don't have to do, and I have a few agents that do things on the back end, not just in my production workflow, but also in my podcasting workflow and the event marketing workflow, but will empower those who know how to wield it intentionally. And that is where, everyone needs to look at it as beyond just a a f- a magic word, beyond just like, this AI is thrown out there. Now every event technology is throwing it out there as their like trademark. Like, okay, but it's more like, how are you going to use it every single day for events, for business and life? How are you going to allow it to help your to-do list and build a workflow that really gets you maybe 80% of the way there, so you can really show up where it counts. So quick example, just last week, AI helped me build an entire production run of show draft in 15 minutes. I would have spent hours on this spreadsheet just to get everything just perfectly done. So much easier nowadays, especially if you have the template, especially if you have the data that you can build upon, right? Like historical data. I was also brainstorming some sponsorship ideas for one of my clients and tiers for a client proposal. That was again done in no time. Then I was also prepping for an AI talk at the end of the month, and I needed to do some deep research. I needed to pull some stats for my talk, and all of that is like with these tools that we have, like deep research. By the way, Phil, I did use that to really get a a little bit of insight into your book, into your podcast, into what do you care about, what are the things that
Mm.
you speak of, and all of that is possible. The wildest part of this is that I didn't feel burnout at the end of the day. I felt like I have more time to do other things, lifting, bodybuilding. It doesn't just happen because I have more than 24 hours than the rest of us. No, it's because I really, really maximize and optimize the time that I have for all the things that I need to do, while also creating space for myself and creating space to rest, to lead, to be a mom for my kids, be a wife, and also be a friend, right? And all of this because I can delegate so many tasks to an assistant that I trained in my own liking. And I can tell you, maybe on a different podcast, I can share the pain I had to go through every single time I hire someone new to onboard, and how long it takes for someone to really get you and understand you. And then they leave, they decide to go somewhere else.
Right, right. Yeah, it's interesting because I've been doing some research on the cost of replacing employees when they leave, and I've seen research that says it's up to $50,000 depending on the level that they were to find the person, train them, and that probably doesn't include how long it takes to get them fully up to speed, which can be 6 to 12 months.
Yeah,
So, imagine how long it takes you with an AI model to get them trained up to do at least some of the things that you've been mentioning.
yeah.
One of the things I wanted to highlight that you said is we shouldn't be afraid of AI, but we need to understand what it can do. And to me, it's what it can do to free me up
Mm,
to do the things that I'm really good at, but I seem to never have the time to do. And that's
mm,
what is one of the multipliers that I'm finding AI able to do.
yeah.
So I want to do something here. So we've got listeners here who are doing their first event. We've
Mm,
got people who have been doing events for a long time. All of them want to upgrade their event and be innovative. So I want you to first talk to someone who is doing their first or they're early in their career. What are some things with AI that they could be doing? Looking at that whole flow, you look at the whole flow that people have, and there's probably some places that are common that everybody should be using AI because it would just make us better. You mentioned the run of show. Give us a couple examples that you've noticed. You always come back to it because everybody needs this.
yeah. Well, before we do that, let's just start with this premise that when it comes to AI, a good prompt is like good programming for your event. Otherwise, you have garbage in, garbage out, right? So, one of the first things that I would teach a meeting professional or event professional, especially if they're in the intro stage, right, is how to ask better questions of their AI. And you want to be able to not just ask questions, but also prompt it in a way that it serves the purpose for your event in a non-technical kind of lingo type of way, right? You don't need to be a coder. That's the beauty of AI, especially these days with so many AI agents. You just need to know how to guide your AI like you guide, your junior assistant, how you guide your husband when he can find this one thing that's in front of his eyes. So I like to think in frameworks. I like to think about prompting in this framework called the clear prompt, so planners can really structure better inputs and then get more reliable outputs. So the clear framework really just talks about context. What's the scenario? Limits. What should it not do or should it do? Expectations. What kind of answers are you looking for as you engage with it? Audience, who is this for? Like, think about your event, think about who you're serving, and then role. Who should the AI pretend to be? I love it to give like this persona, right? Be my speaker coach, be my content strategist, be my marketing expert. So that's kind of like one of my way, in which I like to start with is, you are an event strategist. What would you want to know before planning this event? And it's so simple, but also so powerful, because many times it would surface blind spots that we missed because we were moving so fast, because we had so many things to do, right? Um, Events are not just what happens on stage. This is something that you say all the time, Phil.
Mhm.
They're about what happens inside your audience. And it took a minute for me to understand, what do you actually mean by that, right? Because, like, what do you mean inside the audience? I can't understand what happens inside the audience. I don't know, what's inside their head.
Mm.
However, nowadays we can pull on so much data that we have collected for months and years, event after event, to the point that we can look at what happens inside our audience's mind if we know how to leverage this data to tell us the story, right? So that's kind of like the same thing about AI. It's not just about the automation, the efficiency, it's about the insight. If we use AI to better understand what's happening during our event, pre-event, during the event, post-event, we can then design the experiences that really, really hit the mark. Because, right, the events are the experiences, AI is our assistant, but it is the humans that are the architects. And that's where we want to remember. Why do we put such a high importance nowadays on this role of, who was it? Was Julius Solaris on a recent webinar? He was talking about how everyone's in the event space is changing their LinkedIn title to chief event strategist, even though they might or might not know what that actually mean, right? It's because people want to pretend like now they are the strategist, or some of them have been in that role for many, many years, but they didn't have necessarily a title for it, right?
Right.
So that's sort of like where you need to really put yourself in that role. So when you think about your event cycle, that is the best way for you to onboard AI. Start thinking as a strategist, and how can AI bring in a lot of the insights that up until this moment you might not have had the time to really dive into. I love this one story that was shared to me um, by the head of programming at South by. I was a mentor at South by. I had a session on AI at South by this year in March, and he was telling us, and he hosted this event technologist meetup, and it was over 200 people that showed up. So he was sharing how, in the beginning when they started dabbling into AI as an organization, they were kind of trying to think like, where can we input AI into our workflows? Again, going back to the processes and workflows. And one of the pinpoints that they always had was surveys. They would, receive over 700 surveys across all their content, and they have so many sessions, and they have so many activations, and they have so many different experiences. And it would take their team of like 3 or 4 people about almost 3 months to just, because they really, really were intentional with going through each one of those surveys, reading them and labeling them and tagging them and categorizing them and then following up. That's a long process, right? Like, what do you do with all the surveys? Like, if you care about it, you're going to do this sort of like workflow. And then at one point, as they were like onboarding a few of their new interns, they asked one of them that was more into computer science, technology, all of that, hey, is there a way in which we can leverage these LLM tools that are popping up to analyze our surveys so we don't have to do this heavy lift every single time? Sure enough, there was. So this kid, basically built a what I would call like a custom GPT at the time, and he ingested all the data, all the surveys. He automatically looked through patterns and sentiment analysis and was able to categorize, label, tag based on their criteria. So then what their small team all it had to do is now analyze the pattern, look at these beautiful visual graphs, and deduct and then extract insights and then act upon the insight. That's another thing about AI. Like, just because you have all those tools at your fingerprints and you can do personalization at scale and you can use ChatGPT as your thought assistant and you can get real-time feedback during your event, and I don't know, you can have this post-event recaps with impact and content for millions of years that I don't know what you're going to do with the content, right, post
Right.
event. If you're not acting on that content, on that insight, on the data that you're collecting, then it's kind of like a waste of time, right? It's like, what's the point, right? So that was their time now was optimized. So instead of spending 3 months post event to do all this heavy lift and the work that so much easier done by an AI that is capable of like analyzing things at the speed of sound, right? Or light, whatever, which one is faster. I'm not a mathematician, so
Right.
I'm gonna have to ask ChatGPT next time. Um, they were able now to follow up. They're able now to look into their agendas and into their sessions and decide, okay, that was useful. That wasn't so much. It didn't land as well. And then make connections with better speakers, better sponsors, all the things that we as strategists in events, we wish we had more time. But at the end of the day, you're always kind of like caught in busy work. There's so much busy work that happens, right? I still sometimes get caught up in busy work and then I get frustrated. I'm like, why am I caught up in busy work right now instead of like allowing my AI tool to do this for me? Because we're humans, we fall into the same old patterns. That's
Yeah.
why, even health and wellness and learning something new, it can become with a bit of a challenge, with out of your comfort zone, a space where you have to intentionally put yourself through the pain of doing something different enough times until it becomes a habit. So all of
Can I
that to
interrupt for a
say,
second? Um, you've been talking about something I think is really important for first time or early event owners and those newer in using AI. If you're going to think about strategy,
mm,
they always say start with the end in mind.
yes,
So when we're strategizing, what are the things that we care about at the end of the day? And retaining people is one of those. NPS scores, how satisfied are people with the
hmm,
event? How likely are people to tell someone else about it? How much transformation has happened? What kind of impact that you have? And let's say you could use AI and say, those are the things I care about. These are even the numbers that I care about. Help me know what the things are that I should care about when I'm creating my survey, because we oftentimes throw surveys together with questions that we think sound good but may not
yeah,
tell us the answer to that. And I would think
yeah,
even in the analysis that you're talking about of the data that's come back, look at this data from the framework of we wanted these 3 outcomes. Give
yeah,
me the feedback that's most pertinent and tell me the people who are really dissatisfied so I can reach out to them. Like,
absolutely.
highlight
And
those.
then next level up, I would even say, have another AI challenge
Yes.
this thought process and challenge your own thought process. And
Yes.
I think as humans, we don't want to be challenged. Like if you feel you would come and contradict me and interrupt me and everything that I said, I would be a little pissed, right? But if I want to be constructively growing, I can take it better personally
Yes.
from a LLM that
Yes.
is there to one follow my instructions but also challenge me in my thought process. So going back to what you just said, yes, you can create this workflow where you're going to analyze, you draw some insights, and there's so many tools out there, right? Like I rely a lot on ChatGPT because I've been training it since literally August 2023. So
Right.
it really, really, really gets to know me. I've also used Claude quite a bit. I'm a big fan, especially when it comes to my long writing
Mhm.
essays and all that. Notebook LM, a fantastic tool, especially if you use Google Workspace and Gemini. Those are great, especially for creating mind maps. Love a good mind map. But
Ooh,
lately, I have been a huge fan of Gork 4. I
okay.
don't know if you've gotten a
Haven't
bit
tried
to
it
play
yet.
with it, but the deep research that is capable of doing, and I mean, all of them do some kind of deep research. Perplexity was great for deep research. ChatGPT is doing a really good job at deep research, but Gork 4, like it blows them all out of the water. And that is the kind of insights I need to gather beyond just my data, beyond just the content that I collected throughout my event cycle and historical event data, right? It's beyond that because now it can also go into my competitors' events and draw insights from there. It can go into the viral world of events and find relevant content that speaks to what I'm looking for, to the outcome, to the output that you're talking about, so that it actually brings it all together. Now, obviously, there's also the conversation about security and how much PII are we putting in those,
Right.
free tools out there. That's where I go with a paid tool. There is a better, at least it makes me feel better as far as security goes, that if I'm paying for this tool, I'm not paying with my data. I'm not paying with
Right.
some of the content that I'm putting out there. There's definitely tools like Copilot, Microsoft Enterprise License that will really tighten up security if you are someone that's worrisome about it. And I know there's lots of verticals in our event space, especially life sciences and the medical and pharma type of events, that they're 100% not going to use the tool because they are constricted by like huge security protocols.
Sure.
And even employees are afraid to use it because if it's not approved by their employer, they don't want to get into trouble, right? So that's where other tools like Sparkit, that's another one that PCMA put out there, that it's contained within a space that will only interact with the data that it's within that space, that's secure. And there's a bunch of protocols, and you can dive into that deeper if you want. It's a different conversation for another time. But those are the type of things that I'm thinking about, not only to build smarter run of shows in minutes, but draft marketing copy, email invite, session descriptions that actually not just sounds human, but are based on actual data that you've collected. And one other thing I wanted to drop here is, don't just wait until the post-event survey to
Right.
get an understanding of how your event is doing. I've been using, there's one tool out there that is fantastic when it comes to deep analysis of tracking sentiment during the event, is Turnout Now Copilot. Not only that does it track sentiment throughout the entire event, but it also flags issues. It can surface attendee questions during the event. It's kind of like having this second brain on steroids that is really monitoring everything that's going on in within your event ecosystem. And then everything that happened post event, then you can still run through the dashboard and then analyze what you received and how you're going to act again upon that.
Can I ask, it's called Turnout? Is that the
Turn out
okay.
Now, and
So
is their event
what's
copilot.
what data is it pulling from to get the sentiment analysis? I mean, there's obviously real-time surveys that people
Registration
are
data,
contributing. Okay.
badging, scanning. You can even pull from, I think, the Zenus type of beacons and installed whatever, if you want to really tag into that type of data. I think a lot of events are not there yet, but there's a lot of data points that it can get pulled from. Mostly for most events, I think the biggest ones are registration data, uh, Bluetooth technology as you're going in and out, or facial authentication as you're scanning through a session, or what else have I seen? Um, Actually, Steven Connect. I was at Steven Connect a couple of months ago, and I was really monitoring how many beacons and how many human trackers they installed. And they were really testing their, obviously, AI. But I mean, just to go into this space, which was the launch space, they had over 50 beacons installed over this one trust, because they were comparing data from a lot of different tools from their entire umbrella of features and tools that they have. And it was interesting to see how many were everywhere. And this is kind of like the reality of our events, right? Like, you might not be aware unless you really pay close attention, but there's going to be monitoring of movement, of heat maps, of reading, the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth signal of people as they move from place to place, from why do they leave the session, where do they go, where do they cluster, and what does this all mean, right? It's like going back to what we said in the beginning, understanding what's inside our audience's minds, but now with data. Because short of interviewing every single one of them to really get a grasp, what else do we have, right?
Yeah. Can you I don't know if this is possible, and I know there are restrictions in some states like California that you
Mhm.
can't use facial recognition software in certain applications, but can AI read emotions on people's faces? Can it tell if someone's angry or happy, or have we got there yet?
So I had this very interesting conversation with Nick Borelli,
Okay.
just on my podcast recently. I haven't released the episode yet, but those are a few questions that I had for him as well, which he would make a great guest, by the way, for you
He's
if you
been
didn't get
on.
a chance to talk
I
to him.
also haven't released it yet.
Okay, awesome. So we were talking about the difference between event authentication, recognition, and Zenus uses event, I think, analytics or something else. Like, that's not those two. And I have used event technology before for other events where we would call it authentication, which what it does, like, let's just say you register for this conference and you want to use a fast track check-in. So you would upload a selfie of yourself in advance as you when you register. Gives you the ability to do so, but it doesn't store your information. It doesn't store your selfie. It doesn't store it. What it does, it maps basically the pixels on your face, and it turns that into data, so that that data meets you at the other end when you're ready to get to the registration counter to get your badge. So all you have to do is go in front of this iPad. You show your face, kind of like you do at TSA, right? They say they don't store your information. They don't like use it in any way, shape, or form. They just authenticate it, right? So you go through the scanner that scans your face, and by the time you did the next 5 steps to the counter, your badge is already printed. You put it around your neck. You go to the next thing, right? You might go into a session where, again, there might be another iPad that just scans your face and knows that you're there, but it doesn't necessarily know beyond the inputted data that you put in that registration form. So that's how it connects to that. Now, what Nick was saying, that what Zenus does, it doesn't even know that. right? It wouldn't even collect that kind of data. It wouldn't know if, say, Anka went into this booth or Phil did, but it would understand based on all these pixels and information collected over time that if it's a small petite person that with curvy shape, it could be a woman versus it's a man. I mean, I'm kind of bulked up, so probably I might be tracked as a, someone else, not a female. Who knows? I don't know. But based on the same type of data analytics that it does, and on again a good amount of data that's been collected over a good amount of time, and that's where the limitation is too, right? If you don't have enough data sets to train whatever it is that you wanted to train, there could be questions. There could be things like, we see what's happening here, but we need more context. We need to understand why people are flocking in this corner of your booth versus this other corner, right? And then you realize as they tell you, well, we had like some free giveaway happening here, and that's why everybody was, because you can't tell from the data if it was just women. Was it women that were interested in the gifts, or was it like a mix of people? And the same thing to your question with analyzing sentiment and feedback based on, again, data that was collected and certain keywords or certain changes in mood and sound, right? Like people that laugh versus people that are quiet and in a session, and you're like wondering, is the speaker that captivating, or everybody's bored to death and they're half asleep and nothing is happening anymore, right? So tracking all of that goes back to what kind of data you're collecting, how much of it you have access to, and how can you optimize that data and clean it up and prep it for whatever purpose it is that you're trying to use it for.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think you could identify behaviors within
Mm,
the audience that tell you something or you wanna at least track. I mean, just because someone's on their iPhone or mobile device may or may not mean they're engaged. It might mean they're taking notes.
yep.
Obviously, if it's up here and they're taking pictures, they're
Yeah.
engaged. If you
I
see
mean,
people
if you watch
falling
me,
asleep.
probably you'll know that I'm working through every single session.
Yeah, and there are people doing that that are acting like they're listening. So I think if you track that data over time, and especially things
Yeah.
like, are people getting up and leaving early? If you see large
Mm.
numbers of people doing that, then you go back and wonder, well, what happened? How does that
Let me ask
relate?
you something, Phil, because I was actually really trying to work through this scenario in my head.
Okay.
And it's a practical scenario. So let's just say you have this session and you have a speaker that is talking on a particular topic. And halfway through the session, just people keep moving, like they keep just quietly just like leave, right? So, two different things, three different things, many different things. Why that is, the speaker is not good, the topic is not interesting, there's something else happening at the same time and everybody wants to boogie. Is this around lunchtime, they want to go get in line? A good number of reasons. But let's just say, as the event organizer, you see this in real time on your dashboard because you're paying attention and you're collecting all this data, and you want to do something about it.
Yep.
Do you go into the room and take people out of this room into a different session that's more engaging? Do you stop the session and say, okay, well, it sounds like this is a waste of time, waste of everybody's time? Do you let it go and just next time you're like, okay, we'll know better. This is what happened. Like, to do some kind of a real action, real time action based on real time data, there has to be some disruption to happen, right? And as humans, like, it's hard for me to put myself in the shoes of someone, an event professional, that would go into that session and say, okay, everyone, I have a better session for you.
I probably would not do that. We have people in the room at the events that I do. We've got an MC who's monitoring what's going on, and ultimately they're in charge. If they see something that's gone off the rails, like we had a speaker this last year who was trying to do something with technology that wasn't working.
Oh,
So
that's so
the
frustrating.
MC, yeah, and it wasn't totally his fault. Like they'd tested
Yeah.
it before the session. It should have worked. MC got up there and tried to help it move along and kept it
Yeah.
interesting, but people were frustrated. But here's a real-time example. This, AI could have maybe helped more people know that this was happening. I happened to be outside of a keynote that was at the end of the day, and there was one of our team members out there in the hallway, and we started noticing after about 20 minutes that a bunch of people were leaving.
Mm,
And I realized quickly what was happening is that we had a pre-keynote going on. It was actually a sponsor, and it wasn't very good. It was very salesy, and
mm,
they're like, "Well, if this is what the keynote's
yeah.
gonna be like, I'm going to
It
dinner
turned
early."
everyone off. Yeah.
So, 100 people probably. And so I got my teammate and I, and we stood at the doors and said, "You know what? You might not want to leave because the
Mm,
keynote that's getting ready to happen is probably going to be one of the best things that happens at the event." And we got some of the people to turn around and say, "Okay, I'll give it another chance." Other
yeah.
people were like, "I've got dinner plans," they didn't tell us.
Yeah.
AI could have maybe alerted the team so more people could have been back there. So
Yeah.
that's like a real-time example of something that happened, I don't know when
Yeah.
this was, 3 or
And I
4 years
think
ago.
what I want to add to this is in conjunction with this, with the data, with AI, with, being what you just mentioned is having the humans in the room to notice, to
Yep.
take notes and observate based on real time um,
Yeah.
happenings, right?
Yeah.
And that's, I think, where even though I'm pretty sure we'll get really, really good at having collecting data of in all sessions in all places, I mean, to the point where we're just going to be like overloaded with all this data. Having the person to be able to pick up on a sentiment, pick up on emotions, pick up on maybe there's a bunch of people that are leaving because they're cold. AI might not pick up on that, or
Right.
maybe they're leaving because they just smelled the, lunch happening in the other room, and they're like, "I'm getting hungry. I need to go and pick up and get a snack or something," right? So having the people that are there to support the event on so many different levels, I think no matter how far and how evolved AI will get, that's going to be so elemental and so important. And another thought here, because it's been something that it's quite a it's been elevated a whole lot, especially in LinkedIn content. A lot of people that I follow talk about this because it's important, is the fact that nowadays, because there's so much information and some of it you do not know if it's real or not. You have AI creating content, you have AI avatars, digital twins, and all of this, right? Being in person at a function, at a meeting, at an event with people that you can see and touch,
Yes.
it's going to be so important. So, creating experiences for those people that will leave their comfort zone, will leave their home offices to be able to have that time, face to face time, it will be more important than ever, because we will crave that more than anything. We will crave authenticity and trust, and being able to talk to someone that talks in your language and understands you at that human elemental level.
I totally agree. I think that's a great example of AI can help us intensify the human experience by identifying the things that are maybe pulling away. You see a bunch of people leaving a room. You want to be able to figure out why. Maybe you can't real time, but maybe you can and solve the problem. Certainly, post
Yeah.
event, it can help us. I say, you know what? At that 13 minute and 17 seconds, something happened. Maybe there were people in the room who know. Maybe you can go watch the recording and figure it out, but then learn from it. But it seems like AI can help us be more efficient and more effective, but it can't replace what we do as humans. And I don't think it ever will. And that's why people come to our events. They want that human experience.
Yeah.
Anka,
Absolutely.
we've run out of time,
Yes, we are.
unfortunately.
We are. This
We
is a
go
great
for
conversation. We could keep
Yeah,
on going,
we
Bill.
could. I always end the show with this is a non sequitur, by the way, but I always end the show with a saxophonic moment where we recap a couple of themes from the show. So I'd love you to give me 3 words, ideally one of them emotional, that stand out from the conversation that we've had today.
All right. I think we definitely talked a lot about experiences, architects, workflows. Is there more? Strategy.
Yeah, and let's get an emotional word. What's something emotional about all that?
um, I'm not an emotional person, Phil. It's
Okay.
help me out.
Um, I think you're going to feel satisfied if all those things are being done. Like you're creating a transformational experience if we're more effective in doing all the things that you've described today.
I
So
like satisfied. I like it.
satisfied. All right, so here we go. I'm going to go ahead and play, and then I will come back and end the show with your contact information. You
Okay.
ready? All right, that was so great, Anka. I hope you enjoyed that. This conversation has been so amazing, and I hope that you would tell everybody how they can follow you. Where should we go?
Absolutely. First off, I just want to end with one thought because we've talked about so much. And if there's one thing that I want you to leave with is stop chasing AI features and really start looking at the real problems and real frictions that you can solve within your event cycle or within your business or whatever it is that you do. And another thought here, you do not need to master it all today. Start small, maybe use AI every single day for 1 week. Prompt one LLM tool so you can get better at prompting. Maybe automate one task that you just keep on doing and you don't have to do it. Look at your workflows and what is one thing that you could support your own self so that you have free time to do other things. Be strategic, work out. We didn't get into that. And then as far as where you can connect with me, I am very active on LinkedIn. I have 5 different pages. Again, I live in containers and I love to create content that supports AI leadership, thought leadership, strategy, technology. I also care again a whole lot about fitness, fit for events, wellness, AI and wellness. That's going to be the next big thing, and excited about that. And I'll definitely create a pretty good report of what that looks like because it's happening in Anaheim next month. And with that, yeah, find me on LinkedIn. That's where I live. I have my websites listed there and all kinds of places where you can DM me, comment on my post, and I'll make sure that I answer whatever question you might have.
Fantastic. And I'll provide that link in the show notes, everybody. Thank you, folks, for listening in today on another episode of the Event Innovator Show. Let's go change the world one event at a time.
I like it.